we had a demo. We had a demo where it had, dynamic avatars. You could join a lobby. It had IK, VoIP, and honestly, that was a miracle in and of itself because Bevy didn't
Mm.
even support VR until like a couple months before doing that demo.
Mm.
So, like, that's the level of, you know,
Welcome to the Metaverse Degen. I'm Lion.
I'm Old Man Raptor, and we got one hell of a guest, and that is...
hey, I'm Butlah, or TheButlah.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Butlah. It's an absolute pleasure to have you.
Why do I want to call him the butler?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Cool. Well, I'll just jump into the meat and potatoes of the conversation then. What are you most known for? How'd you get started? And what got you into VR chat?
So I'm probably most known for working on Slime VR. I was one of the people really involved in that back when it was, initially transitioning from like the really shitty prototype, but we just launched the crowd supply phase to like something like very good and polished. So I kind of jumped on I saw that project. I was like, oh, this is really cool. I want to get involved. I had a lot of full body tracking already. Like I had tundras and vives and whatever. And I was really into dancing, and so I was like, oh, maybe this is like another type of tracker that I can use. And actually, since building my own slimes, I haven't gone back to vives or tundras since. So yeah.
Oh. And
Okay.
what got you into working with how you help Slime and what got you into VR to begin with?
Um, well, so what got me into VR was like most people probably COVID. There was like some ad or something by Oculus saying like, look, like here's a VR headset, it's only $300. And I was like, wait, what? Like I thought that these things cost like 2 grand or like something ridiculous. Like even the index doesn't cost that much, but I thought they were like that expensive. And so I was like, oh, like it's like I'll go get this. This seems cool, and I'm like kind of bored, so I picked it up, and I discovered VR chat. I had like a very cursed phase where like I would like sing in my room, like in my bedroom with my roommate in the other room, and it was like peak COVID, and so I would do like those karaoke worlds. I'd just be like singing in my bedroom. And one time my friend had like a girl over and I was just like singing in my room and he was like, what are you doing? um, so yeah, I probably ruined his date on accident. Whoops. But yeah, so I got into VR from that, and then I got really, really into dancing and all sorts of stuff. So that's kind of how I got into VR in general. And then like in terms of slime, I built my own trackers, and then I got really involved in working on the what do you want to call it, the boundary between the like core part of the application and the UI. So there's a Slime VR developer called Beast who's really, really awesome. He's one of the best developers that I know, and he did most of the work, but I helped him design like a lot of the protocol that powers the UI in Slime today.
Wow. Now,
Oh.
the kind of development you did with Slime, was VR chat your first time doing that, or do you have experience with that kind of work outside of VR?
So some of the stuff I had experience with before VR. So like there's like the serialization stuff that we used to communicate between the graphical user interface and the backend. Like that was stuff that I had a lot of experience with. But I also got really into like low level embedded microcontroller stuff. So like stuff that like doesn't even have an operating system. Like your computer boots like Windows and Linux and whatever, and this thing doesn't boot anything. It boots itself. So I was like writing really low level firmware in a programming language called Rust, and I was doing it all using like pretty advanced like asynchronous code. And that taught me like a lot about not only Rust and asynchronous programming, but also just like microcontrollers in general. So yeah, that was one of the things I learned doing that. And then that directly translated actually to, I think at least that translated to me future employment opportunities, not at Slime, but like in the professional workplace and stuff. So yeah.
Okay. I have a question because I'm very dumb. But what is the difference between the operating system that launch Linux and stuff and what Slime does by it booting itself? What's the difference between the two?
Yeah, I mean, so, back in the day, like computers were really slow and really tiny, right? And so, um, you know, they, the microcontrollers of today are like the computers of like decades ago. They're like super, super tiny, weak computers. So like on a full size like computer, you might have like gigabytes of RAM and terabytes of hard drive space, and your CPU is going to run at like billions of operations a second. But on like a little tiny microcontroller, your CPU might only run at like millions of operations a second, which sounds like a lot, but it's actually really, really, really slow, and it might only have kilobytes of memory and kilobytes of storage. So like the constraints are like fundamentally different. And so firmware for microcontrollers is typically a lot lighter weight than something like a full-size computer because the hardware is much less powerful.
Okay. Well, ask what got you into programming.
Yeah, I think if you ask a lot of developers, especially those my age, you'll hear like similar answers. Minecraft. It was Minecraft.
Makes sense. I can understand that.
Yeah. Basically, like in high school, I think it was like sophomore year of high school. I'm 28 now, so that just gives like some context on how long ago this was. It's just wild that like in high school, someone who's 28 was like, learning how to program playing Minecraft. But I guess I'm old now. But I would like invite my friends over to my house to do like sleepovers and whatever, and we were super giga nerds, like turbo nerds. So we would like code as our like fun sleepover activity. And I distinctly remember like writing lines of code and then like getting the lightning to like strike wherever my like wherever I was pointed at. Like if I right clicked on a blocking game, the lightning would strike there. And I was like, whoa, like that's so cool. And like that's kind of where it clicked for me. And so from there I got like really, really into programming. So like some people really like trains. I really like programming, and specifically I really like Rust, which is a programming language that I think is really cool.
Well, may I ask what makes you enjoy Rust over the other languages?
It's does everything like the way that I wish it had done, and so I came originally from like, Java back in the day, which is what my was written in. Right? And after Java, I went to like a bunch of Python. I did a bunch of like machine learning, deep learning research, artificial intelligence research before it was cool. And I got too burned out from AI, and I don't know AI anymore. So I switched over to.
I think you're having you're lagging a little bit. Or maybe it's me.
No, he's breaking up on my end too. That we didn't want to interrupt you. Yeah, you're breaking up really bad. We're catching every other word.
Oh,
okay.
Sorry.
They're all connected. Okay. Can you hear me fine now?
Yeah, you're a lot clearer now.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I'm back.
Yeah, back. Sorry about it.
Okay.
I thought I'm looking at line. We're looking back. Is you having the same problem I am? Because you don't know. It could be only on one person's end, and everything else like this. And we didn't want to interrupt you just in case. And line looked at me really harsh.
I was trying to figure out if it was you or it was me, because most times when I start hearing vocal bugs, like, oh, I'm gonna blip out soon. So I want to make sure I wasn't gonna crash midway through this. So I'm sorry. Please.
No worries. I guess we can always cut in post. But well, what was the last thing that you did you hear like
No, we
the
didn't hear
spiel, or
any of
should I
the
repeat?
what you were answering the question. It was gone right after you started.
No worries. Well, basically what I was saying, and interrupt me immediately next time,
Okay.
so that I can
Of course.
check in. The what was I saying? Yes. How did I get into Rust? Why do I like Rust?
Yes.
So I used to do Java for Minecraft. Then I switched to like Python. I was doing a bunch of like artificial intelligence and deep learning stuff. And this was like before AI was in its current like hype cycle and cool. So uh, I got super burnt out from AI after getting like really into it. And so then I was like, okay, let me find something else. So I was, I was doing Golang and for a little bit, and I was like, all right, that's cool. That kind of taught me that, that it reaffirmed, it healed me. I used to be like a super object-oriented programming person, and that thing like helped me realize that that's not the way. And so I was working full time for like 2 years at an artificial intelligence company doing C++. And like C++ is like this really fast, pretty low level programming language. But programming in that language would be like if you were walking through this field and it was full with landmines. And like every step that you took, like you just step on a landmine like randomly, right? It's just like a really it's a badly designed programming language, and it's very hard to use correctly, and there's a billion ways to use it incorrectly, so it's full of like landmines that you can step on really easily. So that got me like really frustrated, and I had already like known quote unquote C++, but I picked up Rust because it was like C++ but better, and everyone kept saying like, oh, Rust and Go. These are like the two languages that you should look at. And I learned Rust, and that taught me more about C++ than like a year and a half, or actually it was more than it was like at that point 2 years of C++ development. So I learned more from Rust about C++ than I did from C++, which should
Interesting.
go to show you like how like well designed Rust is. And it has all the same performance, but it doesn't have a field of landmines that I have to step through. So I got really into Rust. And then, of course, I went through the like rewrite it in Rust phase, like everyone does. I think I'm still in that phase a little bit. So like when I was working on Slime, like I wanted to do everything in Rust. So they had their like C++ firmware. I wanted to like completely rewrite and redesign the firmware and do it all in like embedded async Rust. And now in not in Basis so much, but in Nexus, which is like another project that I work on, that entire code base is in Rust, and it's in this Rust-based game engine. And I'm taking a lot of the prototyping and stuff that I'm learning in Nexus and applying those learnings in Basis, except that happens to be C# rather than Rust, which makes me sad, but it is what it is.
Oh. So may I ask, what is it you do and help with Basis? I remember hearing some of it from Dooley when we chatted with them. And what is Nexus?
Yeah. So first I'll talk about Basis. Basis is this social VR framework. And what that means is that if you're a game developer or even a world creator and you are inclined to, go build your own video game or go do something that like isn't possible within the constraints of VRchat's technical, limitations, or you want to just do something different, you can use Basis. Basis gives you a toolbox, and you can take all the tools out of the box and go build your own game. And you can do that in a way that would like save you, probably like years or, 1 or more years of time. Because if you were trying to go, build like a social VR application, like you'd have to do a lot of the stuff that we're doing right now. You need IK, you need voice over IP, you need like avatars and dynamic bones and like all of this other stuff, right? And so Basis is, and not to mention all the networking and everything. So it gets really complicated, right? So Basis is basically a toolbox that lets you build that really fast And the idea is to kind of make VR accessible to everyone, not just people who are, have years of their life to burn, or for people who are backed by like really big companies or whatever. So it's to make everyone able to do social VR games.
Oh. So how did you start getting involved with Basis?
Yeah. So basically, I had been working on this, open source VR thing in the Bevy game engine. Bevy is like a Rust-based game engine, and essentially, I was working like a really long time on this, and it's taking me forever, right? And I learned a ton, but ultimately I didn't necessarily have that much to show for it. Like we did have like a networked, very basic demo with like incredibly shitty IK and like really bad glitchy voice and like whatever. But like that wasn't going to be good enough for me to use, right? So at some point, I had been like talking to my friends. I think it was, basically I was talking to my friends and someone mentioned Basis, and so I went like in like I think the very first like before Dooley actually started working full time in Basis, I kind of met up with him, and I met up with him and Lyuma and Unix, and Cascadian, and I'm sure there were other people. I hope I'm not I hope I'm not forgetting anyone, but basically there was like a small group of people who all really felt that like this sort of VR toolkit was necessary. And in particular, what was interesting is that it wasn't just Unity developers. Like I said, I'm a Rust developer. I'm a Bevy developer. Lyuma, who I mentioned, works on v-sekai, which is a Godot-based, social VR framework. And Dooley is doing, the Unity one. And so this was basically kind of a bridging of the divide, because VR developers and just game developers in general get like very tribal about like which game engine to use. Like, oh, Unity is better, or Bevy is better, or Godot is better. And that sort of fragmentation means that like we all end up working on different things, right? So when Dooley and Lyuma and myself and like a bunch of people like all got together in one room, and we were like, you know what? Some of us don't even want Unity, but like Unity is the thing that works and gets us to where we want to be, and we want to build this thing. So let's try to support Dooley and help him build this framework, right? So I got really involved from that point. And because I'm not, a Unity developer and I'm not a C# developer really, what I focus on in Basis is specifically portable identity. And I can get into that if you want.
I would love to. I have a bunch of questions, but what is portal identity, and would you mind also explaining the differences between the engines you mentioned, such as Godot, Lyuma, and all the others you mentioned? I know Unity well enough, but I'm not familiar with the others as well.
Yeah, so Godot is a game engine. Lyuma is a person. Lyuma is one of the developers.
He's actually a program running around going, see, it's me. Oh.
Sorry, I confused some of those things up. I apologize.
I was completely lost, so it wouldn't make any difference anyhow.
You should get Lyuma on the show at some point. I think that'd be really interesting to talk to. They're a super experienced developer. A lot of these developers are super experienced developers, but Lyuma is very cracked. And so Lyuma has been working for years on the Godot game engine, and specifically trying to get Godot to have like first class support for VR, right? And the main difference between Godot and Unity is, and I hope this isn't like, people, like I said, people are very tribal about their game engines, but from my perspective, the difference is that Unity is closed source. That means like Unity owns it. If they take it away from you, there's nothing that you can do about it, right? Godot is open source. So Godot is owned by the community. It's not owned by a company. And that's actually really important because it means that like when things like Unity's licensing fiasco that happens where they say, oh, we're going to charge you every time you install the game, stuff like that makes it like impossible to have free games. And so whereas you'd never have that problem in Godot, right? So the biggest, well, one of the big differences is like Godot is open source, Unity's not. But on the other hand, Unity is kind of this like industry titan. It's the top dog, and Godot is the underdog. And Godot isn't as mature as Unity is, and some people don't like Godot's programming language, which is called GDScript. It's like a specific to Godot thing, whereas Unity uses like C#, which is like, no offense to the Godot developers, but a real programming language. I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for that, so don't come at me. But yeah, so yeah, Unity is more mature, but it's closed source basically. And so people who really care about like freedom, right? Want open source game engines, and that's why game engines like Godot and like Bevy, which is the Rust one, are so important. But because they're so young, because they're the underdog, they don't have as much features, and it would take way more time to develop a social VR application in it, which is why Basis exists, and people still build on Unity even though it's closed source because it's ready. Yeah.
I have one more question before we delve into Portal Identity. How does Bevy differ from the other two you mentioned as well?
Yeah. So Bevy, this is another thing that I'm going to get flack for, but these are my opinions, right? Unlike Unity and unlike Godot, Bevy has extremely good technical foundations. It's an extremely modular game engine. People have built entire games where they rip out the entire rendering part of Bevy and do their entirely own custom thing. You can even use Bevy not in games. You can use like the entity component system that it has in like server applications, right? Like it's like incredibly modular, and that's something that I have never seen in any other game engine in any other language. Like it's just like truly an incredible engine, but it's very new, right? So some of the people that I was working with when I was working on Nexus, which is this, sorry for throwing out so many terms, but Nexus is this project that I'm still working on that is social VR but for Bevy. And in the course of that, I talked to a few people like Malik Iyer and Otterpip and Safari Monkey, and there's a lot of these like Rust VR developers who got VR working for the first time in Bevy, and this was like while we were doing this Nexus social demo stuff, right? So there's been like huge leaps and bounds, but Bevy doesn't have an IK system, although to be fair, as far as I can tell, Unity doesn't have a procedural IK system either. Dooley had to write that himself. Bevy doesn't have an IK, it doesn't have like animation layers, it doesn't have a lot of the like technical foundations that you would expect from like a production grade game engine, but what it does have is like rock solid bulletproof fundamentals. So that's kind of the trade-off you're making there. And of course it's in Rust, which is my my special interest, as we've said.
Cool. Now before we go into the rabbit hole of Nexus, what is Portal Identity, may I ask?
Yeah. Well, first, let me open my door because it's really hot. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so portable identity. Well, okay, so what is identity in general, right? So identity is something as simple as like an account. Like in Vrchat, my identity is TheButlah, and yours is Lion Turtle 21, right? It's how we as humans, show ourselves to other people. But it's not just how we show ourselves to other people, it's also how we show ourselves to machines, right? Every time you start a VR chat, you have to type in a username and password to log in to TheButlah or Lion Turtle, right? And then only once you've authenticated to VR chat servers can you then log into the game and go to people and say, I am me, let's hang out, right? So in most systems, accounts, identity, and usernames, these are kind of all the same thing. But in my system, in the thing that I'm building in Nexus and Basis, and also I hope v-sekai will adopt it as well, I'm trying to build something which is more portable. And what I mean by that is you can bring your identity from application to application without any issues. So, for example, if you log in on Facebook and then you go to VRChat, you may or may not be able to use that same account. If you go from Twitter and then go try to use your Twitter account on VRChat, like you can't do that, right? And there are, ways that you can sort of do that. So like a lot of websites have that like login with Google button or login with Facebook button, right? And we've all seen that a billion times. But your account is still owned by Google, right? And so every single game or every single application that you want to use, you still have to like sign up for the first time on that application, and connect it to your Google account. I mean, again, this is something we've all done on websites all the time, right? But what if it wasn't just, I sign into a VR chat or I sign into Gmail? What if it was like a whole network of computers? You have a computer, you have a computer, I have a computer. And what if we wanted to skip the middleman and just talk to each other directly, right? Well, I mean, that would be nice because I don't need to create a new account for every single game, and this is actually kind of the crux of what portable identity is. It's a way to have your identity and bring it from application to application to application, and it just all works, and it doesn't require a single organization or centralized company or anything like that can like gatekeep or control the end user. So it's very like pro I don't know what the word would be, pro consumer, pro user, I don't know, but yeah.
Oh, well, thank you for explaining that. Mask, what started portable identity? And Mask, how would that be safe versus the regular way people would log in and interact with machines and the internet?
Yeah. So the portable identity thing started because I think every single game developer that I have spoken to all agrees that like building a social network is hard. And they don't want to do it for good reason. They don't want to deal with the moderation. They don't want to deal with the infrastructure, the labor intensive nature of it. They don't, there's so many problems associated with building like a traditional like social network, or even a traditional platform, right? And this is part of why Basis is explicitly not a platform, because we're saying not like we are opting out of all of that. We don't think it's in our wheelhouse. If someone else wants to do that, they can go do that. But we don't want to spend our precious human labor, like our time. We don't want to spend that building up just another platform. We don't want to just build another VR chat. Like we don't, and again, no shade on Chill Out or any of these other applications, but like we're not just trying to build like a VR chat clone. We're trying to build like a toolbox for game developers to use. But at the same time, you know, it's a social framework. It's a social toolkit. So we still need, a batteries included way for game developers to be able to have accounts and do identity and have usernames and friends lists. Maybe that's in scope. Maybe it's not. Unclear. But like we want ways for developers to do this. And the vision that I kind of have, which is, just to be clear, it doesn't necessarily reflect Basis's vision. This is just what I think things ought to be. The vision that I have is basically you friend me, I friend you, and then that friends list is like stored locally on my computer, and I don't need like to log into a website. And accounts are like generated locally on my computer. They use like complicated mathematics called public key cryptography to basically prove who we are to each other. You can do like end-to-end encryption, which is like a privacy feature if you want. You can even do peer-to-peer networking. So with only basically no servers. Technically, there's one tiny server, but it's a very, very small server. I can basically connect to anyone else who's, I'll call it an address, but really it's a public key. And I can connect to anyone whose peer-to-peer address I know. And what that unlocks, when you have this sort of like, every user has this peer-to-peer address, I can actually directly connect to those people. And I can, do all sorts of things. Like, for example, I could directly transfer my avatar to you without having to pay for an expensive, CDN that burns a ton of money. I could actually do all of the VoIP directly peer-to-peer with you so that I don't have to, there doesn't need to be one dude running this thing, paying tons of money, hemorrhaging money just to like have the bandwidth paid for all these users. Because what we're doing right now takes a ton of bandwidth, and if we could make it where we don't have to rely on some benefactor or central company to donate that bandwidth to us or charge us for that bandwidth, if we can just connect to each other, we skip that middleman and things can be run by the community. So I think primitives like portable identity and public keys and things called decentralized identifiers, all of this stuff is what makes having a community operated and a community run social network possible, but it's just very different from the social networks we're typically used to thinking of. It's not a centralized social network owned by a person or a company. It's something, owned and operated by individuals themselves, and basically, a community of people that all participate in this network.
Okay. So I want to try to compare it to something just so I at least I can understand. So would it send data similar to like the Bluetooth communication devices, where it'll take a either Bluetooth or a link or whatever you connect to, and then bounce it to its location? Is that how the communication would work in portable? What the thing you're talking about? Sorry, I'm just trying to.
So I'm trying to figure out like what the right level of technical detail is here, because I guess the hand wavy explanation is our computers generate magic numbers, and there's like a secret one and a public one. And when I add you as a friend, we exchange the public number. So you're saying, this is my public number, my address, and I'm telling you this is my address. And these are not IP addresses. These are like public keys. Like they're like a literal number on your computer that is like randomly generated. And what you can do with that is there are really complicated systems that I won't get into too much unless you're interested,
I'd love to hear
that can then map those numbers, those public keys, into IP addresses. So, for example, this is how like BitTorrent works. When you download a file over BitTorrent, you're basically resolving like a hash. This number, this random number. You're mapping that to an IP address, and then you're connecting to that IP address directly from your computer, and then downloading whatever content you want to download. So that's an example of like a fully peer-to-peer system where there's not really any one central computer that like serves files. Users just like connect to each other and discover each other, and then when they connect to each other, they can like download files or do whatever, right?
Okay.
And all of that is enabled through cryptographic public keys, which is this random number that I was talking about.
Oh, well, thank you very much for explaining that. I very much appreciate it. At least I have a better understanding of it. So thank you. So is that an easy thing to try and build or basis as a public social framework, may I ask?
Fuck no, it's not easy to build. It's not easy to build. And this is, I think, why like no one has done it, right? Because, like I said, game developers are like, nah, I want to opt out of that. I want to build a game. I want to focus on something that's fun. I want to focus on things like IK and things like VoIP. I don't want to have to deal with like, how the hell do I do NAT traversal with, distributed hash table, IP address lookup, and gossip protocol. Like that shit is complicated, right? So my goal for me, like my personal goal, is since I'm not very good at things like IK and Unity and actual game engine stuff, I just want to narrow my focus and just do the really hard problems, which, I mean, they're all really hard problems, but the particular set of hard problems which are related to portable identity, right? Because if no one works on that and, Basis becomes this like really successful toolkit for building games, we're just going to have, someone come in and say, wow, look at this really useful toolkit. I'm going to go build a social VR platform. And then they're going to go and build a social VR platform, and it's just going to be VRChat 2.0, which, is not a it's not a diss, but I really like VRChat. I don't think we need a VRChat 2.0. I think VRChat is really good, and I think someone trying to, just build up another like centralized company that maybe it relies on venture capital, maybe it doesn't, but whatever it is, like I want something that is community operated. I want something that users and people who just care about the game run themselves, right? And the only way to do that, where individual users just like run nodes on the network, they run servers themselves, the only way to do that and still have like a lot of the social features we expect, like public lobbies, friend statuses, friends lists, all that, avatar CDNs. Like the only way to get a lot of that stuff and have it be truly community operated, I think, is through portable identity. It's the only way to do it. If you don't have it, you basically just can't have a system where any node can join and essentially donate its resources to helping other users. And I want users to help other users. I don't want users to have to buy something from a company to help other users, right?
That's very understandable.
Not that that's bad. It's just that for what I'm trying to do, that's what I'm interested in. There's other people, just to be super clear, there's other people in Basis that don't even agree with that perspective, and that's okay. And there's plenty of people trying to build, for-profit things, and that I support them fully in that, and that's why Basis and Nexus and every single piece of software I have ever written has like a very permissive license that's very pro-business. It's something that companies can build upon without fear. So it's not that I dislike companies. I think that companies play a really vital role in VR. For my personal interests, I'm just interested in building something that can be like community operated, you know.
Okay. So, with building portable identity, what have been some of the hardest things so far, and how did you traverse those problems?
Oh, geez. I mean, I spent a really long amount of time in the research phase,
Hmm.
right? Like, first of all, I had several false starts. So I told you how I was like working on Nexus, and Nexus still exists, but like originally I was doing like full on, peer-to-peer network physics, like crazy shit. And even if I got all that done, I still wouldn't have a game worth playing, right? Because where's the rest of the game? Like, it doesn't help to work on like really advanced networking technologies if you don't have a game worth playing. Who's playing the game that you're going to use the networking technologies in, right? So I spent a lot of time doing false starts. Then I kind of narrowed my focus. So I said, look, I'm going to let Bevy cook, and I need to, I don't have that much time. I have a full-time job. I only have so much time after work. So I need to narrow my focus. What actually matters the most? And what I think matters the most right now is getting this like portable identity thing that Basis, Nexus, v-sekai, Overte, like any of these social VR platforms, or not, sorry, any of these social VR applications. I want something that they can all use, right? So to do that, I spent again a lot of time in the research phase. In particular, I looked into how Blue Sky works. I looked into how Mastodon works. I took a lot of inspiration from Blue Sky in particular. I think Blue Sky has really interesting choices around the trade-offs that they've made for a good functional application that users actually enjoy, while still simultaneously supporting more decentralized or peer-to-peer use cases. And so in particular, one of the technologies, there's two really, really critical things from Blue Sky that I discovered. One is DNS-based handles, and one is decentralized identifiers. So decentralized identifiers basically are the account identifier. It's like the random series of numbers that is like my account number. And what makes them unique is that they are resolvable to like a cryptographic public key, the thing I was talking about earlier. And the other thing that Blue Sky has are handles, in particular domain-based handles. So, for example, when you create an account on Blue Sky, you create, TheButlah.bsky.app, and that's a website. Like, you can go to that, right? I can use TheButlah.com because I actually have purchased that domain name, right? If you purchased the domain name, you could use it on Blue Sky too. Or if you don't want to spend money, you can go get a domain under someone else's server. Like if, for example, I own the website socialvr.net, I'm building a service that would allow you to create, lion.socialvr.net, and you could do that for free. Like that's not something that it's very easy to do. So like why not give that out for free to people? And so that's handles. It's that human readable username. So decentralized identifiers, machine username. Handles, human username. What actually shows up above your head.
Okay. So those were the most difficult parts of this process. How did you get into and solve those problems when you got into them?
Yeah. Well, so once I did a bunch of that research, it was a question of how do you actually like build these things out, and in particular, like what are the right trade-offs around having something useful for users and while simultaneously, like, also, like, we, like, in Basis, for example, like, I didn't want to have something that, like, users had to go create an account to use, because that just, first of all, it's kind of lame and annoying, but second of all, you're kind of climbing back into that platform territory, and Basis doesn't want to be a platform, right? So the question was, all right, well, I've identified that, like, decentralized identifiers are cool and good to use. How do I actually use them, right? And so decentralized identifiers have several different mechanisms. A lot of them are based on, like, cryptocurrencies, and I kind of write that off. I mean, for the most part, I kind of write that off as crypto slop. Like, I don't think that, for the most part, any of those methods, like, actually solve a real problem. So instead, I really did my digging, and I was like, okay, what are the decentralized identifier methods that actually are useful? And I came up with 3 existing ones, and then a 4th one, which is, work in progress and something that I'm working on. So there's something called DID key, and this is like a specification you can look up online. It's DID colon key, KEY. And this is basically just a public key, that random number that I mentioned before. Like, the DID is literally the public key. There's also DID web, which is like, the DID is a website. Like, you go to a website, you do a GET request, and it gives you, like, some data that tells someone, like, here's a set of the user's public keys. And so the difference between those two is DID key doesn't require an account. It's entirely peer-to-peer. DID web requires some sort of central server, and it can be many servers, a whole federated community of servers, but there does need to be some server that you go and create an account on. And the benefit of DID web is, like, for example, you could set that server up so that, like, you can have password reset. You can log in with your Oculus account. You can log in with your Steam account or your Google account, and then, if you forget your password, you can reset your password. So a lot of those sorts of conveniences you normally expect from, like, a website, you can find at DID web. So those are, like, the 2 simplest ones. But then we get into, like, significantly more complicated ones. So there's something called DID PLC, which is what Blue Sky uses. And DID PLC is like DID key, but on steroids. It's like it's a series of random numbers. So it's literally like DID colon PLC colon blah 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 blah, like random numbers. And what those random numbers represent is, like, the initial state of the account. To be technical, it's the hash of, like, the Genesis entry of the account, if you will. So these numbers basically freeze in place whatever the initial state of the account is, and in particular, it includes a set of public keys, and then any changes to the account over time, like, let's say the user resets their password or whatever, those changes need to get signed by the previous public key. So from just the decentralized identifier, you can validate the initial state, and then from every subsequent signature along the thing, you can get all the way to the final state. So it's essentially an entirely, it's an entirely trustless system, and it's reasonably suitable for peer-to-peer applications. The problem is just that Blue Sky runs it. So if you wanted to go, like, spin up your own DID PLC server, it's open source, but, like, it's not going to be, like, an official DID PLC server, right? So that's where we get to the 4th method, whose, name does not exist yet currently. The temporary placeholder name is DID Yeet. And I swear to you, this is a placeholder name. It's not the final name. But I picked a silly name because why not keep it fun, right? And that one is even more complicated than DID PLC. So that one uses, fully peer-to-peer technologies. You can create the account entirely on your on your computer. If you want to, migrate it to a server, you can, but you don't have to. You can update it and change the keys and have key hierarchies, and you can also send that information entirely peer-to-peer to other nodes, and then long term, which is not something I'll be working on for a couple years. Eventually, it will get to the state where it even has a guarantee of freshness. So it'll use something called Byzantine fault-tolerant CRDTs, which is a really big handful of words. And that's basically a networking technology that allows you to send information on a peer-to-peer network and have everyone kind of converge on one final value. And you can do that in a way that doesn't require blockchains. It doesn't require proof of work. It doesn't even require majority rules. Like, it's very, very powerful technology. Very, very pro-consumer, I think. So, but it's also really hard, right? These things are really fucking hard to build, and I'm only one, I'm one person. So, although Malik, who I mentioned earlier, works with me a lot, and he's very cracked, so we both code some of these things. So let's say 2 people. There's only 2 people doing this, so it takes time. And I expect a lot of these projects, even though I narrowed my scope to be just portable identity, the more complicated versions of it, I expect to take years. The simple versions are already done. So you can already use the ID key in Basis. And, domain-based handles are on their way. They'll be done pretty soon. Yeah.
So with a lot of this ways it works, is that will it be user-friendly? In terms of, like, if I with 2 brain cells can get in and use it?
That goal, because I think a lot of
you're starting to do the breakup again.
You're starting to break up.
Sorry. Hello, I'm actually here to interrupt the episode you're watching really quick to ask you a favor. Please come join us at any of the other locations we have. You can find us on YouTube and Spotify, both of which we post our episodes and are very up to date on both. We have Discord where you go to hang out all the time, where you're gaming and shooting the breeze over with many people over that way. Feel free to come join us. I invite you. If you wish to support us, we have a Patreon where we post a bunch of random bits, bobs, and extra podcasts every once in a while for you to go enjoy. Also, if you wish to support us while in Vrchat, we're now part of the creator economy. So please come join if you wish to support us there. It's there for you to choose if you so wish. And thank you very much. And a special thanks to some of the people who have signed up on our Patreon, which are as follows, and I have written down so I'll remember. And that's a tough thing. Forbidden Zero, Niche, Aliquum, Future Oracle, Lesser Capybara, and Frozen. Thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
I don't remember what you're talking about.
Fair.
Well, that commercial break really broke everybody at this moment. We'll get back to you, and we are going back to it, but Lion will fill you back where we left off. So, thank you. Come again.
Yes. I asked the question, will this be user-friendly?
Right. So, yes, that is an important design constraint. I don't want to build something just for nerds. I don't want to build something that only like mathematicians and cryptographers and peer-to-peer researchers use. I want to build something that is like actually accessible to like, the e-boy that comes in at 3 a.m. drunk off his ass and wants to, go play this like wacky, game, right? Those people matter too, and I think that like as programmers and technologists, sometimes we like forget that not everyone is like super technically inclined, right? And so it's
like
very
me.
important.
Like me, the old folks that go, "Hey, I like this shit, but what the fuck are you doing? I'm lost." Yeah, you want it as simple as like you're trying to say that you can actually, in your point of view and everything else, you want it simple enough that if I sat down and told you how to, word for word, what you're doing, it's almost like putting you behind a car and telling you how to turn the key on. That steps on the gas. This puts it in the drive, reverse, park, and all that. and it will go down the road, and all you have to do is steer it. I understand where you're going with it and everything else like this. But if you get it too complicated, it's like today, if you ask somebody, hey, if I put you in a car and tell you it's got a manual transmission, most people go, what? What's that? How do you drive it? They don't know. So you don't want them to be confused. And I understand that.
And this is why when I was doing that like year and a half of research on this stuff, it's why I ended up choosing Blue Sky as like the thing to draw most of the underlying technology from, because Blue Sky uses decentralized identifier. They use decentralized identifiers. They use domain-based handles, but when you create an account on Blue Sky or when you use Blue Sky, it feels almost identical to Twitter. It's like barely different. And that's like, I think, an incredible achievement, because they have this like fully, federated, or really actually it's more than federated. It's like entirely decentralized network of, social network, but an average user can just go sign up like it's just a normal website, right? And I want something even easier than that, where you just launch the game and there's not even like a sign up process, right? That's what I'm hoping for. And things like decentralized identifiers, that's like an implementation detail that shouldn't be exposed to the end user. The only thing that end users would see is like maybe instead of like TheButlah, they would see TheButlah.com. Like it would be like an actual domain rather than just the username. But yeah, I want it to be easy for people to use. And that's part of why it's hard to build. I want to do the hard work so that everyone else doesn't have to fucking think about it. And likewise, Dooley is doing the hard work, and Layuma is doing the hard work, and all these people are doing the hard work so that someone who just like wants to run an event or build a game, like they don't have to think about any of that shit. It's just been done for them. And that's why these technologies are so important, because it elevates the playing field for everyone.
So I have another interesting question as well with Basis, with what you're working with all these different game engines and coding bases. Would this kind of system and in turn each of these engines communicate with each other within Basis well enough for something like that to work?
Honestly, it's too early to say. I think it wouldn't just like out of the box, like you'd go from Basis to Nexus to v-sekai. I think that's a little unrealistic. Although I would love if we could do that, but that also requires people to like agree on like what's the right way of doing things, right? What I do think we could do, and what I do think would be reasonably likely, is like all the portable identity stuff that I'm building for Basis, I'm definitely going to use in Nexus, because Nexus is like me and Malik's project. And I've spoken to Layuma, and at least they are interested in using it for v-sekai, and I've spoken to various people, and there's a lot of people that are interested in this. So if I can get it mature enough, if I can get it easy enough where you don't have to be a rocket scientist to integrate it into your game, I think that you will find that like my friends list works across every game, or my you can build out this stuff in a way that like works on every game, or at least games that adopt it, which I hope, by virtue of it being in Basis as like an optional add-on that people can turn on if they want, I hope that people will choose to do that, and they'll say, oh, this is actually really cool and useful. I don't want to have to run social networks. I just want users to own their own identities. Let's just turn that on and let them do that.
Oh. So I want to ask another question as well. v-sekai and Nexus, some of the things you mentioned, what are they and how do they differ from Basis?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, v-sekai is Godot. It's based on the Godot game engine. And Nexus is based on the Bevy engine. And in order of maturity, we have, I would say, Basis is the most mature. It's also the youngest, actually. So ironic. But that's a product of Unity being a very mature game engine, right? So Basis is the newest, but also most feature complete. Then you have v-sekai, and v-sekai is the oldest of all of them, I think, but is maybe less feature complete, but they are doing some really excellent work and really hard work to get it, viable and usable for games. And then Nexus is like basically just the project of me and Malik, and there were a few other people that worked on it as well. But it's kind of just a umbrella term that any of the Rust stuff in VR is using, and that includes portable identity. So if you actually look like where the code lives for portable identity, some of it lives in the basis repo, but some of it also lives in like the Nexus social organization on GitHub. So yeah, if you go to github.com/Nexus social, that's Malik and I's baby. That's the stuff that we're working on right now.
Oh, so with Nexus being a VR for Rust, how does it interact with VR as a code engine? Does it do it well, or how does versus like Unity?
So we had a demo. We had a demo where it had dynamic avatars. You could join a lobby. It had IK, VoIP, and honestly, that was a miracle in and of itself because Bevy didn't even support VR until like a couple months before doing that demo. So, like, that's the level of, underdog that we're talking about, where it's like it barely could, it was a miracle that it could do it at all, right? Like I said, Bevy's an incredible game engine. It's so good. Like I love Bevy. I love Bevy, and Malik loves Bevy too. But it's so young, and because it's young, like it's not ready for prime time. It's only ready for like giga nerds like me, who really like Rust and want to build things. Now, if you're doing a 2D game, like not a VR game, but a 2D game, I think Bevy is an excellent choice. But the 3D, like the professional 3D subsystems that you would need, stuff like animation and inverse kinematics and like dynamic bones, like that stuff just doesn't exist. No one's written it really, or if it does, it's very like jank. So yeah, we have a long way to go. It'll be years before Bevy reaches a state of maturity that oh, are y'all still there?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still
It'll
there.
be years. My computer dinged, so I thought maybe something happened. It'll be years before Bevy reaches. It might even be a decade before Bevy reaches. No, I don't think it'll be a decade. I'm gonna estimate 6 years. I think 6 years before Bevy is equally as mature as Unity is today. I think maybe the same amount of time, maybe longer for Godot. And I think Unity isn't improving very much. Like it'll improve, but it's a really crufty game engine with a lot of technical debt and poor foundations. So Unity will stay the top dog, but it improves only a little bit. Whereas I think Bevy is just rapidly it's like skyrocketing up, but it's so much newer that, still not where it needs to be.
So as a question for me or me and others as well, where do you think Rust and Bevy will do well in a VR environment, Mask?
If you're trying to do complicated networking, so Rust has like an incredible package manager. Better, like I don't know if Godot has any package manager, and C#, at least in the current version of Unity, which is is not based on the .NET Core runtime, like packaging in Unity is dog shit. Like it's really bad. And so the fact that Rust just has a package manager that works means I can pull in like industry standard libraries being used by like the biggest companies in tech for the most complicated projects and just pull that into my game with like basically no effort. So I think, and this is what I suspect, one day, we're going to get to the point where we want 1,000-player instances. And, Dooley has done like incredible work with Basis. He's managed to push the player pop on a cheapo server, not even a super fancy computer, a cheapo server. We can get like 200 players easy, and then you can get like, if you really push it, I don't remember what the number was, maybe it was 230, I'm not sure. Maybe, and then that number is going to keep going up, but I don't think any computer in the universe is capable of running 1,000 players or 10,000 players on a single computer. In order to get that type of, because it's literally constrained by the network cable that you plug into the wall. Your network cable can't shoot 10,000 players worth of data over it, because VR is like super hungry for data, super bandwidth intensive. IK takes a ton of data, voice takes a ton of data, and someone has to pay for that data. So certainly if it's a community run thing, no one is going to get 10,000 player servers, and I don't even think a company can get 10,000 player servers. So what do you do if you want to hit those numbers? You have to have a really complicated and advanced networking technology. So you basically send data to like multiple computers and then like mix it between the computers and fan it out, and it gets really complicated. You might have to use a combination of like peer-to-peer technologies in conjunction with like multiple horizontal scalable nodes to like fan out and manage your bandwidth. That shit's complicated, and I think that Rust is an excellent choice to do something like that in. So I don't know if that means Rust gets primarily used on the server side for this stuff, and we go build like Rust-based relays and stuff like that, or it might also require like things in the game engine. So, for example, some of the peer-to-peer technologies that I'm using, there's this library called Iro, like the Airbender, is it Airbender? I don't remember. I haven't.
I think Iro's a firebender from Avatar: The Last
Firebender. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's named the same as that. That's a peer-to-peer networking technology, and because it's in Rust and because it's using Rust Package Manager, I can take that off the shelf and get going and have successful, really complicated peer-to-peer stuff. Except it's not complicated. It takes like 5 minutes to do. And that's like the power of, I think, some of this Rust ecosystem. Incredibly complicated technologies accessible at the tips of your fingers and made simple. And, to some extent that's true in any programming language, but I think that Rust has a unique advantage there. It's just a force multiplier. You can do way more.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for explaining that. And how did Nexus get started as a game engine, since it's just two of you working on it?
Yeah. Let me think. So, I think it was Malik that originally created the Discord, I want to say. But basically, I was interested in, so I was like asking around in the Slime VR server. I was like, I think we should build like an open source social VR game, right? And someone pointed me to v-sekai, which is Lyuma and the whole Godot thing, right? So I went to v-sekai and I was like, wow, like their goals are literally the same thing as my goals. We have the exact same goals. The only difference is that they're doing it in Godot, and I don't really like Godot. I want to use Rust and I want to use Bevy. So I talked to Lyuma. We bounce ideas off of each other constantly. Lyuma's also been involved, like from day one in Nexus. Lyuma's involved in everything. Like they're super awesome. And so yeah, basically Malik and I were like, let's go do the thing. Let's go build like a social VR game. And it turned out it was really hard. I think it's still a bit too early to get anything that's like actually polished, but we were able to build demos and get get stuff working. And I learned a lot about all of this stuff that we're talking. I didn't know any of this stuff 2 years ago. So yeah, it's been a huge learning experience. And over the course of it, like Malik has been really busy, like building out a bunch of libraries and tools for Bevy. Obviously, Dooley's doing Basis, Lyuma, and iFire, and everyone else that's working on v-sekai is continuing to make v-sekai better. So time marches on, and these projects all improve. But we kind of all, at our heart, share at least a similar vision, which is we think that VR should be open source. We think that we need the ability to make this stuff more accessible to people, and we want our respective game engines to have good support for it. So yeah.
Oh, it sounds like from like what we've learned of you so far, from when you first bought the headset, you've gone quite far since you've come into here. Has things for you changed at all since you come in, or have they changed drastically since you put on the headset?
Oh, things have changed drastically. Yeah, things have changed drastically. I mean, on a technical level, obviously, like I've minimum 10x like my knowledge and proficiency as a developer. On a personal level, I'm a completely different person now than I was when I went in. Like, I learned so much about myself through VR, whether it was, like gender identity, whether it was, learning like how to make friends. Learning that, the types of music that I like, learning like how to be myself, how to live my life, how to express myself. I learned so much of that from VR, and in particular, I don't think this is said enough, I learned all of that because of VR chat, right? And I think it's just an incredible. VR chat is incredible. Like if you haven't played VR chat, get in here. It's awesome. Like it's an incredible game. I think VR in general is an incredibly important technology. It's super impactful. I have so many friends that I met through this game, and that's why I want to safeguard it. I want to build new things that are open source. I want to push the boundaries. I want to raise the playing field for everyone. And that's why I worked on Slime VR, because I was dancing a whole bunch, and I was like, if Vive stops making trackers, my entire like hobby is clipped. So we need open source trackers. So that's why I worked on Slime VR. Now I can wiggle my legs, and it's open source, and I can build it myself. You can build it yourself, and I want that same thing for social VR. I want us to be able to have a good experience on a community based thing.
So have you expected this kind of journey from when you first bought the headset a while back?
Oh no, definitely not. I think I bought it because I was like, oh, I'll play like Beat Saber, and or I don't know, like I don't even know. Maybe like horror games. I was because like, oh, like there's like some cool like VR games that I could play that like like Onward and like stuff like that. Pavlov. And what ended up happening is I bought like a ton of VR games. So Meta definitely made their money back on their subsidized headset. But have I played any of them? Barely. When I play VR, I get in VR chat because this is the best place to be. This is the best application. This is the best platform. This is where the people are. No one wants to go play fucking Horizon Workrooms or whatever dog shit Meta is cooking up. Like, we want to play VR chat, and nowadays, like I go to like raves in here. Like, there's so many like incredible DJs. There's so many incredible artists, people that make maps like this, people that make avatars like yours and mine. There's so many like incredible dancers, and someone in middle of nowhere Tennessee can go put on their VR headset and go cipher with like Japanese, hip hop people, right? It's so cool, and I just think it's so cool, and I'm incredibly grateful to VRChat for bringing that to everyone.
Oh, so you've mentioned a bunch. Well, I'd like to ask, what got you into the dance scene?
My God, what did get me into the dancing? Okay, I think so this is like really early in my VR chat experience. So I think I was in like a what would it be? It was like this like like male. I think it was in like an e-boy avatar originally, which is so embarrassing. And like one of the people that I was like hanging out with, one of my friends, they were like doing like shit in front of a mirror as people do in this game. They were like they were like wiggling their booty or whatever. And I was like, what the hell are they doing? Like, first of all, why is everyone standing in front of a mirror? What kind of like mind virus is this that you're all just standing in front of a mirror? Second of all, like, why is this lady like dancing? And second of all, why is she hyping up this dude next to her who's clear like, again, this is like when I wasn't in the culture yet. I didn't understand, right? I was like, why is this dude like why is she like teaching him how to dance and shit? Like this is so interesting and not something I've ever seen, and I'm very confused and frightened. But she basically, that person was like, hey, like come dance with us, you just got full body, like try this out. And I was like, oh, okay. So I like put on a female avatar, and then like she was like showing me how to do like little hip rolls or whatever, baby's first like dancing moves. And I was like, wow, this is really fun, like this is very cool, it feels empowering. I don't know. And then obviously, I didn't know that I was like non-binary at the time, so that kind of like made me like, I was like, oh, like interesting. And like, okay, we'll make a note of that. That will be important for later. That type of thing. And yeah, it was great. I distinctly remember at some point, like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, yes, that is my answer.
Oh, well, thank you for explaining that. Have you ever done any of the ciphers that you've, for example, mentioned before?
I take classes. So, well, I used to take classes. I haven't really danced in like a really long time. I used to take classes at a couple places, and VRChat being the incredible place that it is, people will just like volunteer their time to do like classes, and you can take classes like almost any day a week. Sometimes there's like multiple classes a day for free. Like you can just show up in a lobby with your full body, and people teach you how to dance, and I think that's really cool. So yeah, I shout out to Espra, shout out to Juzo, shout out to Cheeks, who actually works on who works on basis actually, which was really funny. I was like, wait, I know you. I haven't seen you in like years. You were one of my dance instructors. What are you doing here? So yeah, it's a small world, yeah. So they were kind of my instructors. I learned some dancing. I haven't done that as much recently because I don't know, just work has been really busy. I touch a lot of grass. It's harder to make time, but yeah, I still definitely have a passion for dancing. I just don't get to do it that much anymore.
Understandable. So, over your time here in VR, what have been some key moments or memories for you here?
Well, I mentioned the one with the first time I was in full body with the mirror, etc. Obviously, dance classes. I've met like a lot of people through this game, like IRL. So definitely, like, especially when it was like peak COVID, I made like a lot of friends. Unfortunately, as online friend groups often are wont to do, like a lot of those things and friendships have collapsed, which makes me very sad. But it is what it is. But yeah, there's a lot of cool people that I've met through this game, and lasting friendships as well. Like one of my closest friends here, where I live in person, I met him like through VRChat, and you know, we were like, oh hey, like let's go grab coffee because like we both play this, and you're here, and we both work as software engineers. Okay, let's go grab coffee. And then another of my closest friends I met through him, who also plays VRChat. So yeah, it's cool. You know, the worlds crossing is cool. There's also a lot of, you know, there's some DJ events that I go to, and so I've gotten to hang out with, like, for example, some of the Refuge DJs. And they're super cool, and they're really talented. That's another thing. If you've never been to, I'm sure you have. I mean, you've both played this game for a long time, so I'm sure you've been to like plenty of raves and VRChat. But there's some really talented DJs, really talented. They're very cracked, and I have to say, like, the music that they're bringing is like top notch in many cases. So yeah, they're cool, and I've gotten to see them to do stuff IRL too, which is always a cool time. So yeah.
In terms of big DJs, one of the things I've learned talking with a lot of people is VR and VRChat and social VR allows a lot of experiences to improve with a skill. DJing as an example here. From what I've heard, in real life, you can only get as many gigs as you can get into a club. Versus VRChat, you just open up your Discord and just apply, and you can get an unknown amount of gigs this week and just improve over time through experience. And from what I understand, a lot of VR is like that as well. For example, dancing, as you've mentioned, a lot of places you can go learn to dance. Here, like for example, VR Dance Academy, there are lots of different various places you can go for any of the things.
Yep. VR Dance Academy, the stuff that Dust Bunny does, VODs, VRChat Open Dance Studio, that's my favorite. That's the one that Espra and Juzo do a lot. All of them are really cool. There's so much stuff that you can do. If you're interested in it, probably VRChat has it. There's someone here that has a similar interest to you, and I'm willing to bet that they, you know, you can find classes or whatever for a lot of this stuff.
Cool. Well, I'm going to ask the last couple of questions before we start wrapping up. First of which is the name used in VRChat. Where'd it come from and why to use it?
I don't know. I think it was like in middle school, like someone just said Butlah, like TheButlah. And I was like, I don't know, being a middle schooler, I must have thought that was cool. So I was like, okay, I'll name it TheButlah. And then it just kind of stuck, and I haven't changed it since then. It doesn't really mean very much. And then, yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. And the avatar you use in VRChat, where'd it come from? Why to use it? And is there anything on it that means anything to you?
I don't know. I mean, I've really used, let's say, 3 avatars total. Two of them were from Reflex. It was like I started with like the male version of the avatar, and then, you know, I realized that a female avatar like fit me better, so I went into like the female version of that same avatar, and I did that avatar for like a really long time. Like I used that for years. And then I got this one maybe like I don't know how long ago, maybe 2 years ago. Not entirely sure. I don't know. I just like it. I like the ears. I like the look. I think the fit is cool. Yeah, I don't know. I just like the avatar.
Oh. Well, again, thank you very much for your time allowing us to meet and get to learn all about you and the projects you're working on. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
100%. Thanks. It was super fun.
And where can the audience find you if they wish to find you?
If you want to talk about code or contribute code, you can go to, first of all, there's a VRChat group. So you can go to the Cult of Ferris Rust programmers. It is a Ferris is the mascot for Rust, and so there's a VR chat group in Rust, and there's is there information in there? If there's not information, I'll add information. Yeah, the Discord link is there. You can click on that and go to the Rust XR Discord server. So we have a Discord server just for VR stuff for Rust. There's of course also the Basis Discord server. If you're interested more in the Unity side of things and less on the Rust side of things, go check out Basis. Come join Discord. You can talk to me. You can talk to Dooley. You can talk to Layuma. You can also take a look at github.com/Nexus Social. That's the GitHub organization that I'm doing most of the portable identity stuff in. So if you're really into like peer-to-peer technologies, things like that, or you just like, cool, complicated Rust code, go check that out too. Give it a star in GitHub. And again, just the best way to reach me is through Discord. But instead of dropping my handle, I'd rather just have you join Basis or RustXR. You can go to I think basis.org, and that has a link to all of these things there. I think socialvr.net also has links to things. But yeah, any of those should work.
Well, if you wouldn't mind sending me all of those links, we'll put in the description for you to find as well. One easy place. If you go to the video, scroll down in the Hoobly What's It and hit show more. We have a guest link section. We'll have all of those for you to click, find, and go explore new communities. And if you're on Spotify, it would be in the episode description, same place, same label. And at this point, we'll ask you, the audience member, a question. What is something from gaming that has stuck with you? It could be a community. It could be something you've done. For here, I'd say it's the people I've met. If I've never came into VR chat, I would have been a very different person. So with this, the community is something I've come in that has stuck with me, and I'd like to hear your stories as well. Go down the comment section, leave us some stuff, we'll read it. But that's it, Mr. Raptor. You know the thing.
You know it, Lane. No matter how big your project might be or where you think it should go, and the ups and downs, but always remember the small things, just like me. We'll see you next time. Bye. I wonder if you can ride the train and go inside the fucking over there. That'd be cool.
That would be cool. How big that wall is.
It goes in there and goes around. Why? And it goes around.
Oh, it does. Holy shit.
Fuck yeah, it goes fucking around. I don't know where it goes. Like I said, I just got here. I don't know where everything is.
Huh.
I'm gonna have to check this place out.
Definitely, we're gonna have to.
There's another one. There's another one I gotta show you that It's called the. Yeah, hold on. Another one is called the Cozy Woods. That one's cool.
Oh, okay. We're definitely gonna have to check that out too. There's a bunch we're gonna have to check out.
Yeah, there's some new ones in.